Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first WTS Talk of the year. We're going to give some folks a minute or two just to file in, and then we will get started. Seeing some more folks jump in. Thank you for being here. We'll get started in just a minute.
Yeah, do say hi in the chat. I'm going to have the chat closed because I am easily distractible. But I'm sure that the chat will be shared with me afterwards. So I'd love to know where you're from. Like, where are you joining us from today? I'd love to hear that. Um, I'd love to hear what snacks you bought or beverages
Me
to
too.
enjoy this webinar with. My favorite answer, I asked this question before, and somebody once put in the chat that they had bought cashews because they were the silent nut. And I was
Mm,
like, I never thought of it like that before, but that is genius.
yeah,
So
it's very considerate.
I know, particularly on a webinar when you're muted. More people should eat cashews in the cinema, right?
I agree. We have Portugal, Italy, Berlin, Paris, New Jersey, really? New Jersey, my
Oh,
home state.
is that your family that have joined?
Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, we will dive in. Thank you all for being here with us. This is our first WTS talk of the year. Very exciting and very dramatic. We gained access to this Zoom account 1 minute before the call after it was locked. So we are excited to be here with you. And we are super excited to have the brilliant Hannah Smith with us to chat you through this story today. So Hannah is our head of content here at Women in Tech SEO and also the founder of Wordist, where she provides creative consultancy, training, public speaking, and one-to-one coaching. Hannah has been a part of WTS since day one. She was the first one to reach came with for the idea of WTS, the first person to speak at a meetup, the first person to MC our conference, our first editor in chief, and now our first head of content, the first of so many things at WTS. We are extremely grateful to have Hannah. And if you've ever felt seen or supported or inspired by WTS content, the odds are that Hannah had a hand in creating that. So we are so happy to have you with us today, Hannah, talking with us about your lessons learned from writing 100 stories in 100 days and how we can set ourselves up for goals that we can achieve. So for everyone out there, we have two boxes in here. One is the chat. If you have thoughts, comments throughout, you can feel free to chat with each other in there. If you have a question for Hannah, you can put those into the Q&A section, the Q&A box at any time, and we will get to those at the end. So without further ado, Hannah, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I'm excited to do this. So, the capacity to tolerate minor discomfort is a superpower, or lessons learned from writing 100 stories in 100 days. Oh, I would love it if my slides worked. There we go. Okay. So, have you ever set yourself a challenge or goal, either personal or professional, which you've later given up on? If so, you are my people. I have done this countless times. In fact, over the years, I've set myself a bunch of challenges and goals which I've given up on. But until fairly recently, I never really thought too much about why it was that I gave up. But that's what I want to be talking about today. I want to kind of cover off why I think we give up and what to do about it. And to do this, I'm going to be talking about a challenge I set myself in 2024. So I'm going to kick things off by talking a little bit about that challenge. So I write flash fiction poetry and I love to play with hybrid forms. Or more accurately, I say I write flash fiction, poetry, and love to play with hybrid forms. But all too often, actually, I don't write at all. I don't do any writing. So, in an attempt to move from being a person that says they write to one that actually writes, I set myself a challenge in the summer of 2024 to write 100 pieces of hybrid fiction in 100 days. Some of you might be wondering, what is hybrid fiction? To which I would answer, that's a terrific question. And what hybrid fiction is depends on who you ask. To me, hybrid fiction encompasses like a bunch of different forms, including um, genre bending microfiction. It might edge into non-fiction or even memoir. It might incorporate some elements of poetry or even look like poetry, or it may take like a non-traditional story form. So, for example, um, as I said, like I set myself this challenge to write 100 pieces of hybrid fiction. Not all of them are stories in the sense that you might recognize them. So, one of my stories was actually a list. Another of my stories was actually like an exercise in blackout poetry. So that's where you take an article or an existing piece of text and remove words to create something new. Another of the things that I created was actually like a questionnaire or a survey. I played around with creating graphs or seeing if I could use graphs as stories. Um, that's really what hybrid fiction is. It's kind of, it bends, it plays with traditional literary forms. So this is what I set out to do. So, somewhat unusually for me, I actually completed this challenge. Hooray! That's great. But why was I able to complete this challenge and what do I think I've learned? Well, let's do this. This is a talk in three parts, the first of which I have entitled Minding the Gap. So let's look at the challenge again to write 100 pieces of hybrid fiction in 100 days. Some of the people in the audience may have noticed that I didn't say that those things needed to be good, right? I didn't need to write 100 good things. I just needed to write 100 things. Now, that was a deliberate decision, but why was that important? Largely because of this concept. The taste gap, which I'm going to explain in just a second, is a concept that was kind of came from a guy called Ira Glass. Ira Glass is an American broadcaster and producer, and he's probably best known for a series called This American Life. And he made this observation. Uh, so he says, all of us who do creative work of any kind get into it because we have great taste. So your taste is right up here in the sky, right? However, your output, the things you make, often aren't that great. So your taste is up here, your output is down here, and this is the gap, right? The gap between our taste and our output is often so large, and it's so disheartening to us that we kind of give up, right? This is the taste gap. Now, this concept isn't unique to creative work. Actually, I think it's universal. So Ira Glass calls this the taste gap. I call it the ambition gap. So, in a similar way, I think that when we set ourselves a goal or challenge, like we already know what great looks like, we know where we want to be, we want to be way up here. Problem is, where we are right now is quite some distance away from that. And often we're so far away that that ambition gap feels unbridgeable. And again, we give up or we want to give up. Now, some people think this is just a beginner's problem, but I don't think it is. I think this is a problem which is persistent. And here's why. So if you imagine your ambition kind of going along here, your ambitions kind of grow at the same time as your output grows, right? As the quality of the output that you have increases, like as you get better at something, your ambitions are rarely reached, right? You rarely go like, oh, tick, I've done that. Most of the time, your ambitions just grow in line. And I kind of feel like I often use kind of sport as an example for this. So let's imagine that kind of maybe you're a runner and your initial ambition is like, I want to run 10K in under an hour. And so you work really hard, you train really hard, and you achieve that goal, right? You run that 10K in under an hour. Do you want to stop there though? Or do you then kind of revise your ambitions and go, I wonder if I could do it in like 58 minutes or 55 minutes and so on and so forth. And I think that is why kind of like this ambition gap, like it might narrow over time, but it never really closes. This is something which I think honestly is kind of part of the human condition. So because this was my challenge, right? 100 pieces of hybrid fiction in 100 days, and the things I wrote didn't need to be good. What I was effectively giving myself permission to do was like ignore the ambition gap, right? My goal is not to write good stuff, my goal is just to write. So, and actually, like this is a smart idea anyway, right? Doing a lot of writing is the only way I can begin to bridge that ambition gap because doing a lot of something or doing a lot of work is the only way really to get better at anything. So, problem solved, right? No, sadly not. Giving myself permission to ignore the ambition gap didn't stop me from feeling it. Um, and I wanted to share with you, if I may, a little graph which depicts how I felt about the quality of my writing, the quality of my output over the course of the challenge. So here's my little graph. You can see I've kind of chunked this into like 20-day segments just to make this a little bit easier to deal with and a little bit easier to understand kind of where I am in the process. The reason I was able to make this graph is because I feel slightly embarrassed saying this, but I'm just going to tell you it's okay. So as I say, my goal every day was to write a new piece of hybrid fiction, and after I'd written any particular day's piece of hybrid fiction, I kind of gave myself a score of like how I felt about what I'd written. So like 10 out of 10 means I think that what I have written is absolutely brilliant. 0 out of 10 means I think that what I have written is absolutely awful and is not fit for human consumption. So that's kind of like the data set that this graph is built off of. So you can see early days, like the first kind of 2 weeks, first sort of 14 days or so, everything was actually going like swimmingly well. Like we're right up here. I feel really good about what I'm writing this day. I obviously felt terrific about what I'd written. And then we kind of plummeted. And this was my first bad day. The first day where I wrote something and I was like, oh, like I know I said they didn't need to be good, but this one's really bad and I'm not okay. I'm not okay with it. So that's where we were. After that point, things kind of get really, really bumpy. It's almost like the first hiccup happens. So I have like the first bad day and I kind of start spiking. I'm sort of all over the place. Like I'm having some good days still, but there's also a lot of plummets down, right? Um, Let's move on a little bit more. This is about a month-long period. I think it was actually a little longer than a month, uh, which I refer to as the trough of despair. So throughout this month, everything I wrote, as far as I was concerned, was unspeakably terrible. Like literally awful, unthinkably bad, absolutely awful. Happily, I did kind of come out of that and I kind of went back into wild swing mode. And then kind of as we approached the end of the challenge, finally I kind of got to somewhere which looked a bit more like an even keel. This is probably a week or so where I was like, okay, what I'm writing isn't great, but it's not terrible either. Then, in the final 10 days, my feelings just got really, really muddled. When I look back at the pieces I wrote and how I kind of scored them in terms of quality, it's really clear to me that I'm unable to separate my feelings about the quality of my writing from my feelings about the challenge itself. So I kind of start building up here. Like, and if you were to believe that this data was pure, no data is pure, but like if you were to believe this data was pure and true, you'd be like, wow, strong finish. Hannah's doing a really strong finish, like right at the end there. She's writing some truly brilliant stuff. I went back and read this piece in particular, and honestly, like it's not that good. But there you go. Then finally at the very end, you might be forgiven for thinking that maybe I just keep on this upward trajectory, but instead, no. Uh, Sad. And I genuinely think this is just me being sad because I've reread the last piece I wrote and it's really not terrible. It's actually quite good. But I think I was just really sad. I just felt really sad that this whole thing, this whole big challenge, this whole big journey that I'd been on was over. So let me get back to the point. We're talking about the ambition gap and kind of, yeah, like how I felt about the quality of my work through this challenge. Um, and kind of what's tricky about a graph like this is it's kind of hard to see whether or not I had more good days than bad days. But honestly, no, I did not. So according to me, if you believe the data and, take it with a pinch of salt, I'm not sure I believe my own ratings here. But according to me, directionally at least, I had 32 days when I felt like I did amazing work, but 42 days when I felt like I did awful work. And I think it's also important to note like how non-linear this is. It wasn't like I started out bad and got gradually better. It was just all over the place all of the time. So, why didn't I just give up? Why didn't I just stop? Um, and I think honestly, it's because, right? It's because my goal wasn't to write good things. It was just to write 100 things. And I reminded myself of this fact constantly. And I think ultimately that at some level, I'd decided that I didn't want to let how I felt about the quality of my work stop me from completing this challenge. And I think ultimately that's really why I didn't give up. So, there's been a lot of feelings talk already, and I'm sorry to say, but we're going to get even deeper into feelings in this next part. Uh, in part two, big feelings that feel big. So, I just told you how I felt about the quality of my work during the challenge. But I also want to talk about how doing the work felt. How did actually doing this challenge feel? And the truth is, sometimes it did feel brilliant. Like I felt fully engaged, doing the work felt great. I felt sort of like proud of myself. I felt like I was, taking the steps to achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And I felt really, really good. But honestly, most of the time, doing the work did not feel like that at all. Like even when the quality of my writing was pretty good, I often felt pretty awful. Like actually sitting down to do this writing each day wasn't nice. It wasn't like the best part of my day. Often it felt like the worst part, right? So what was going on for me? Well, sometimes like feelings of doubt were kind of creeping in. So I would kind of be sitting and trying to do the work and I would be feeling like, is this a bad idea though? And I don't just mean is this story I'm trying to write or this thing I'm trying to make a bad idea? I mean like the whole thing. Is this whole challenge a really bad idea? Um, is this really the right challenge for me? Like, do I even want this? Like, is this something I really want for myself? Right. So sometimes it was kind of this doubt thing was kind of creeping in. Um, Often the real world kind of crept in for me. So, like, I remembered a thing I said I'd do and I hadn't done it. And I felt like it was kind of urgent and I felt like I had to do it right now. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't be able to focus or something. And on reflection, actually, I say this was the real world creeping in, but in reality, I think this was more about guilt, which I think is kind of interesting, right? I think at some level, I felt guilty about doing this thing, about expending my time and energy on doing this thing rather than expending time and energy doing other things, right? Other responsibilities that I have to other people. Like I felt like I was letting people down because I was putting all my energy in here. And I was like, so I think maybe there was some guilt going on for me. Other times, I was just distracting myself. And I think that these two things are potentially, or sorry, these three things are potentially related. But I do think there was something interesting about the way I was distracting myself. So I've said here, without fully realizing what I'm doing, I've opened up that awful social media platform and now I'm scrolling my feed. Something which I thought was really interesting that I kept catching myself doing. Like anything I was distracting myself with was something which I didn't really enjoy. So I don't know what this was about, but like I really don't enjoy social media. If you do, that's brilliant and I love that for you. But for me personally, like I kind of find it sort of soul crushing and like just generally like scrolling social media mostly makes me feel sad. It's not a thing which I get any like joy from. And something that was interesting to me was like the ways in which I was distracting myself with social media was sort of another flavor of punishment. It was like it wasn't like I wasn't doing, like I could have done anything. I could have been like, I'm not going to do my challenge stuff right now. I'm not going to work on my writing right now. I'm going to do something really nice instead, like read a book or go and meet a friend for coffee. It was like, oh, no, 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 you don't get to do that. You get to do something like you low key really dislike. That's the only way you're allowed to distract yourself. So I do think there was some interesting stuff going on there too. So, all of this, though, all of this made me realize that I have an emotion management problem. And actually, I don't think I'm alone. I think that many people who think they have a problem with time management actually struggle with emotion management. So, if you set aside time to work on challenges or goals, but then feelings of doubt creep in, urgent feeling, real world stuff creeps in, you start distracting yourself or otherwise self sabotaging, then time management isn't an issue for you, right? Time management isn't an issue because you've set aside the time, and then when that time has come up, you've set aside, you've gone to go and do the work. But rather than actually doing the work, you've then kind of sabotaged. And what you're struggling with there, I think, is emotion management. So the truth is, how we imagine will feel when we're working on like our challenges and goals is rarely how we actually feel, right? And it's another flavor of gap. This one I'm calling the expectation gap. So we set ourselves a challenge or goal, and like we're excited about it, and we're like, it's going to feel really good working towards this. We imagine doing this work is going to feel really good and make us feel good. But in reality, often doing the work of the challenge, like it's way down here, right? It actually feels pretty awful. Um, and so this kind of disrupts us. It kind of like it throws us off course, right? Because we thought it would feel so great. And so when we find that it feels awful, we feel like giving up. Or sometimes, if you are anything like me, you'll start seeing it as like, oh, it's a sign from the universe, I should give up. It's not. It's not, right? It's just about emotion management. So, if this is something you can relate to, or if this resonates with you, like something I would ask you to kind of like think about or ask yourself is like, are you actually feeling awful in those moments? Or are you just feeling a little minor discomfort, right? As I said at the beginning, big feelings feel really big in the moments when you're feeling them. But most of the time, those moments don't last very long. And also, they don't stand up to scrutiny, right? Most of the time, like we say, oh God, this feels awful. This is so hard. Like, I hate this. But actually, you're fine. You're actually fine. Those things you're feeling are not intolerable. They're actually pretty easy to tolerate, right? So, uh, like a lot of this thinking, and in fact, the title for this talk comes from a guy called Oliver Berkman. And this, what I'm going to share with you now, is an excerpt from Eight Secrets to a Fairly Fulfilled Life, which was an article that he wrote for The Guardian back in 2020. So he says the capacity to tolerate minor discomfort is a superpower. It's shocking to realize how readily we set aside even our greatest ambitions in life merely to avoid easily tolerable levels of unpleasantness. You already know it won't kill you, but you can waste years in avoidance nonetheless. It's possible instead to make a game of gradually increasing your capacity for discomforts, a bit like weight training at the gym. And it turns out he's right. I found that I could increase my tolerance for minor discomfort. And actually, it was something that I'd been working on. Sounds like a weird thing to say out loud. I had been working on increasing my tolerance for minor discomfort long before I even started this challenge. It kind of started for me back in 2023. Um, and I was, one of the things, like one of the goals that I had, one of the things I really wanted to do was launch a new live cohort Zoom course. It was something I really, really wanted to do. I wanted to create this course and I wanted to run it. And I was kind of excited about it, but I was also kind of frightened in a bunch of different directions. Um, and so, whilst I was kind of working on, obviously putting all the work in to kind of create that course, launch it, market it, sell tickets and whatnot, I worked on like increasing my tolerance for discomfort in the following ways. So, first thing, really, really important, is around adjusting your expectations, right? I recognize that sometimes working on this challenge or this goal or this thing I want to achieve, sometimes it's going to feel great, other times it really won't, and that's okay. It's not a sign from the universe that I need to stop. It's not a sign from my subconscious telling me I'm doing the wrong thing. It's not that deep, it's not that big. It's just a little bit of discomfort, and I am okay. Um, the other thing, which I kind of really just had to give myself a good talking to about, really, was like recognizing that the discomfort I'm feeling isn't actually intolerable. Now, I want to put a caveat on this, right? There are limits here. So, like, if a challenge or goal or thing I want to achieve, like consistently, genuinely just made me feel awful, I would rethink it. I'd be like, oh God, like I need to do a reset here. Something's going wrong. But most of the time, it's not intolerable at all. And I find even today that if I take a moment to just kind of sit with what I'm feeling, those kind of awful feelings quickly fade. And even if they don't fully fade, I'm able to acknowledge that, what I'm feeling is entirely tolerable. I'm fine. It's fine. I don't actually need to stop. Final piece of the puzzle, like put a sensible time limit on this stuff. So when I was working on launching that course, what I did was kind of do it in 30-minute chunks. So literally, I'd set a timer on my phone for 30 minutes, and I was just like, I'm just going to work on my course for 30 minutes. That's it. That's all. That's all. Just 30 minutes. That's all I'm doing today. I'm just spending 30 minutes on this thing. And what that kind of enabled me to do was kind of realize that, like, you know what, even if I'm not feeling great about this, I only have to feel this way for another 30 minutes and actually it's fine. And I did quite quickly, like, increase that. So I went from like, oh, it's just 30 minutes, it's just 45 minutes, it's just an hour, and so on. And so, like quite quickly, I found I was able to handle things a little bit better. So, I'm just checking the time. I'm doing all right for time, I think. So, the final thing I want to talk to you about, I said this was a talk in three parts. This is the third part. I want to talk to you about time. because time is an all too real constraint. So let's look at my challenge for one more final time. My challenge was to write 100 pieces of hybrid fiction in 100 days. And, some of you might be sitting there thinking, like, if Hannah can do a challenge like that, I can do a challenge like that too, right? I don't mean you have to write 100 things in 100 days. If writing isn't your thing, you could just do whatever your thing happens to be once a day for 100 days. Maybe you could do that. And like maybe you could, right? I'm not saying it's not possible. Maybe you could do something like that, but also maybe not. And the reason is really simple, right? Like my life is not the same as your life. We do not all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? Our lives are wildly different. Some people have caring responsibilities, right? They have caring responsibilities for their children, for relatives, like other relatives in their lives, for their friends. Some people have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs. Do you know what I mean? Just to keep a roof over their heads and food in their bellies. Like they do not have the same amount of time. Like none of our responsibilities are the same, and time is not the same for all of us. We do not all have the same 24 hours in a day. And this means that the goals and challenges you set yourself really need to reflect what you have going on in your life. Because a reasonable challenge for me might be utterly unreasonable for you. And the reverse is true, right? A reasonable challenge for you might be utterly unreasonable for me, right? We need to set these things for ourselves and kind of not look externally at like what other people are doing as like a barometer for what's possible. So, there's also a really important thing I failed to mention, right? This wasn't a reasonable challenge even for me, right? It's not something I'd recommend that anyone else actually try to do. So, why? The challenge is way too long, right? 100 pieces of hybrid fiction in 100 days. 100 days is a really long time. A lot can happen in 100 days, which you did not foresee. Some stuff came up for me, which I did not foresee. Some stuff came up for me, which I did foresee, but just didn't fully take into account. For example, my dad had had knee surgery, so and couldn't do very much for himself. So I was looking after him for kind of 30 or so of these 100 days. I just sort of like didn't take that into account. I also had jury duty. Fortunately, I was discharged from jury duty, but I also had jury duty at the same time. Like I really didn't think this through. It's way too long, way, way, way too long. And the other thing is like I'm essentially trying to sprint a marathon here, right? It's like this is an intense amount of work to do over a long period. Normally, when you work in an intense fashion, you do it over quite a short period. Um, like I said, with the intensity, the other thing I really didn't think about was like rest days, right? There are no rest days. There's no opportunities to catch up if I fall behind. And of course, I fell behind. At one point, I was 15 stories behind. Catching up felt impossible. Like there was one day where I wrote 4 stories in a single day. That was a horrible day. Like, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. That's not a good thing to do, right? So yeah. If I was to do a challenge like this again, I'd probably aim to do something like write 5 pieces of hybrid fiction in a single week, or maybe write 20 pieces of hybrid fiction in a single calendar month. Once again, with emphasis this time. If I were to do a challenge like this, I would aim to write 5 pieces of hybrid fiction in a week or 20 pieces in a calendar month. I'm not recommending that for you. I'm recommending that you set yourself an appropriate challenge that reflects what's going on in your life and the time that you actually have available to you. I'd also recommend starting small and building up, or starting small and staying small, like doing, uh, small challenges frequently, right? I recommend that too. It's almost time for me to wrap this thing up. So I'll happily take questions in a few minutes. But before I leave you, I'm just going to do a very quick recap of what we've covered today. So, the next time you set yourself a challenge or goal, um, be mindful of the ambition gap. So, just as a reminder, what is the ambition gap? We've got where we want to be way up here and where we are right now down here. To get to great, right, we're going to need to do a lot of work, right? So, my suggestion to you is like, don't challenge yourself to be great at something. Instead, challenge yourself to do the work. So, just to go back to my running example again, uh, maybe like your ultimate goal may be that you want to run 10K in under an hour, right? Or 10K in under 50 minutes, whatever it is. But rather having that as your goal, instead have something like run 3 times a week. So your goal is not actually the time. Your goal is to run 3 times a week or run 4 times a week or, like whatever makes sense for you. But the training part is the goal rather than the kind of time bit as the goal. That's what I would recommend for you. Because certainly, like if you're just starting out with anything, not just running, if you're just starting out, you'll be so far from where you want to be that it can kind of feel like unbridgeable. You're not going to ever make it, and it'll make you want to give up. So. The other thing I'd encourage you to be mindful of is the expectation gap, right? Working on your goals and challenges, actually doing the work won't always feel great, um, but that's okay. It's also possible to increase your capacity for discomfort. And honestly, like I do think it's a superpower, not just in terms of like, achieving particular goals and challenges, but just generally as a life skill. I think it's like an incredibly useful life skill. Most importantly, though, I would encourage you to acknowledge what you already have going on in your life. The time that you have available to you is an actual constraint that no amount of time management can ever overcome. Even though those time management folks might tell you different, I promise they're wrong, right? Time is a real constraint. So, uh, I do just want to say that I firmly believe that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. But be kind to yourself. Think about the goals and challenges that you're setting yourself and kind of set yourself up for success. Seek to set yourself up for success. Ultimately, I'd strongly encourage you to go and do that thing you want to do, whatever it is. I'm cheering for you. Thank you so much for listening to me. Good luck out there. I'm going to stop screen sharing and hopefully I'm going to see Erin's smiling face. Hey!
Hello. Thank you so much, Hannah. So wonderful. And I know you haven't been looking at the chat, but there's been such lovely conversation.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. Please
you
do
have.
send me the chat. I love seeing the chat afterwards. Thank you for the chat folks. You're
Yes.
lovely.
All right. So let me share my screen and we can get into some of the Q&A. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All
Sounds
right.
good. I'm fine now. I've done my talk.
There you go. This is the easy stuff.
Right?
All right. So, how far into your process did you actually realize that you had an emotion management problem, not a time management problem?
That's a great question. And I think so. I guess like there's sort of two things I really want to acknowledge here. Like I feel like like a lot of people, like I already knew I had an emotion management problem in some contexts, right? So like for all of us, I'm sure, like we all have tasks or things that we need to do which we don't enjoy. And so like we go to weird lengths to avoid them. So an example for me, obviously I'm a freelance consultant. And so I have to do my accounts. Like that is a thing that I have to do. Whether I like it or not. That's like a thing that I have to do. Um, but like I get so extra about it. Like it's ridiculous. Like it's not a thing I like to do, but in my head, I blow it out of all proportion. I'm like, doing my accounts is like literally the worst thing in the world. My life is so hard and tragic and sad and boo-hoo-hoo, poor little me. And it is ridiculous, right? Because actually, I don't find doing my accounts that difficult. It doesn't take me that long. It's really not that awful. It's not something I love to do, but it's actually fine. So I kind of always knew I had an emotion management problem in like that direction, right? But what I didn't realize was that like I don't just experience emotion management problems when it comes to things I don't want to do. I also experience emotion management problems when it comes to stuff I really want to do. And that was the thing that was like a weird, like a big realization for me. It was kind of that aspect. Um, yeah, like as I said, I first realized that I had this problem in 2023. And it was because I went on a course that was run by Oliver Berkman. And he said this amazing thing really early on in the course. He said, like, the key skill you need to develop is not time management, it's emotion management. And I was like everything suddenly made sense to me at that point. I was like, oh, that is it. Of course, that's it. Of course, that's it. Like even when it's something I really want to achieve, my head will go to these really dark places sometimes. And I think there's kind of two flavors to it. Like some of it's like doubt and inner critic stuff. Some of it, as I said, is like guilt. Um, and I think it's, like honestly, I think I find sitting with those things and being in that space of discomfort so difficult that I'll like do anything just to remove myself from it. And it's like I say, I I recognize I might sound like a little bit evangelical about this stuff, but I really do believe it that like this realization that like which at some level I always knew, right? Like I always knew it wasn't that bad and I was just kind of like making a big deal of it, but it really was stopping me. Like it really was stopping me. And I think when I look back, like a lot of the stuff which I set out to do and didn't do was because of this, because I just kind of let it, do you know what I mean? I wasn't able to manage my emotions around this stuff. And yeah, and now I'm not perfect at it. I had some moments today when I was prepping and I was like, this is so hard. I don't want to do this. But yeah, I'm much better at sitting with that discomfort now and just realizing like what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, as you're talking about, those moments of discomfort, I am realizing, though I know what the signal is when I'm in a moment of discomfort, and it's my flat has never been cleaner because it's that I'll do anything but.
anything. Yeah, I'll literally do anything. Yeah.
All right. So next question we have for you is, have you set another goal since this one?
Yes, but nothing of this magnitude. And honestly, that's deliberate. Um, I think that, or I am sure that for some people, setting like really audacious goals and challenges, like it gives them life. Um, and I love that for them. And if you're one of those people, I love that for you. Honestly, it's not for me. It's not for me. I'm really glad I set myself this challenge and that I achieved it, and I feel like I learned a lot through it. But honestly, the whole thing was pretty unhealthy for me.
Mm,
Like it wasn't like when I look back on how I was during those 100 days, like it wasn't a healthy time for me. And so now like the challenges and goals I set myself are like deliberately shorter in time scale. They're deliberately less intense. And I'm just trying to be a bit kinder to myself, like more generally, in terms of like acknowledging the other things that I have going on in my life. And I do think that like in 2024, I was maybe in denial a bit about the other stuff that I had going on. And I'm a bit more like, do you know what? Those things are important too, and pretending they don't exist doesn't help. So let's acknowledge them and
another
kind of
form of,
reframe this. Yeah.
avoiding discomfort in a lot of ways it could be framed as. But yeah, it sounds like you learned. I mean, there's so much you learned from this. I
Mm.
feel like this could be, maybe this is a series, all of the lessons learned.
All of the lessons, yeah.
Do you have any tips on, what you mind, like the ambition gap when setting goals?
Mm. Definitely extra tips, like beyond what I talked about, some other things which kind of, and thank you so much for asking this question because there's like you put together a talk and there's always stuff you have to leave out. So I love you for asking me this question. I kind of have three things which I recommend people kind of think about. The first is to make sure that you have control of the outcome of any goal you set yourself.
Mm,
So by that, I mean, like, for example, like a very common professional goal for people is to like speak at a conference, right? That's a fairly common professional goal. And I think it's a great goal, and I want that for you. The problem with it is that you're not in control of the outcome, right? The conference or meetup organizers you're pitching to speak are in control of the outcome. You
mhm,
can't really control whether or not you're selected. And as such, I guess like what I would encourage people to do is like rather than making speaking at a conference your goal, set yourself a goal to like submit speaker pitches to 10 different conferences. Like
mm,
make that the goal. Um, Rather than because that you're in control of, right? You're in control of whether or not you pitch. You're not in control of whether or not you're selected. Um, and yeah, so that yeah, I'd kind of encourage you to kind of think about it like that. Um, the other thing, like give yourself some days off. Like, don't set yourself a goal that involves you doing a thing every single day because it's inevitable that something will come up in your life that'll make this impossible. So make sure you build in rest days. And I think you know, that's obviously particularly important as well. I think if you are doing anything, I'm not a personal trainer or like I don't have any fitness qualifications, but maybe if one of your personal goals is around like fitness or something like that, like make sure you've got rest days. You'll just break yourself. You'll break yourself. But you also need rest days even if this is not a fitness goal, right?
yeah.
Um, and then finally, I think it's really it sounds obvious, but I think it's a mistake I made in the past, which is why I kind of want to highlight it. Make sure whatever goal you've set yourself is your goal, right?
Mm,
And like this one's really for the people pleasers out there. Like at various points in my life, I felt huge pressure to set goals which other people thought would be great for me, right? Like my family, my boss, whatever, my friends even, right? And it's not that those people had bad intentions. They had great intentions and nothing but love most of the time, although some bosses. The problem is that it's just a lose-lose situation, right? Because if you fail to achieve the goal, you kind of feel crappy and horrible. But even if you achieve the goal, you still
mm,
won't feel great, right? And this actually happens to me. Like many times in the past, I've achieved something that someone else wanted me to achieve, but I didn't really want it for myself. And so when I kind of achieved it, I just sort of felt empty. I was like, well, tick, I guess.
yeah,
Like I didn't feel achievement. I didn't feel inspired, or like I didn't feel like I wanted to go and do the next thing. I was just like, well, I've done that thing then. Like, if anything, I sort of resented it. And people would be
wow.
like, aren't you feeling good? And I'd be like, if you want, like, sure. So yeah, those are my three things. Yeah. Give yourself some days off, make sure it's your goal, and make sure you have control of the outcome.
Yeah.
Additional things,
I
yeah.
love that. And yeah, the control of the outcome and even like combining that with the make sure it's you're saying you have any other goals have been perhaps like a little smaller, right?
Yeah.
But there is that idea of what is the big thing you want to do? Like someone in the chat said they're learning Portuguese, right?
Ah,
So
yeah.
maybe the goal shouldn't be to learn this language, but the goal should be about, okay, the cadence of practice, something along those lines. So
Yeah, exactly. So like what's that? I'm not saying you're using Duolingo, but like Duolingo is like
uh,
exactly that, right? Like
hope for that.
streaks
Yeah.
and stuff. But like, yeah, whatever that might be, sensible. You know what I mean? Sensible. Like, so, I'm gonna practice Portuguese this many, this much time a week or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So when you use your time limit method and
Yeah.
maybe when you were creating your course, right? Let's say the
Mm.
timer goes off. Do you stick
Hmm.
to, but you haven't fully achieved what you set out to achieve in that chunk of time. What do you do? Do you stick to the timer and say, okay, I'm done? Do you keep going?
So, controversially, you stick to the timer and you stop.
Mm,
And this is like a kind of like secondary kind of a trick that I noticed. So obviously, like this only works, I have to say. Like obviously, like I had the ultimate goal of launching this course, right? There was this course that I wanted to build, create, launch, and sell. Um, but uh like that was there, you know, that was the ultimate goal. But like the kind of the challenge I set myself was work on it for 30 minutes a day. And actually it also takes it takes emotion management actually to stop when you want to keep going. And I think that that can also be like really, really helpful because, and again, it depends on your personality or whatever, but certainly like something I have a tendency to do is like if I'm working on something and I'm having like a really good time, I'll like keep going. The trouble is that I keep going to the point where it's not very healthy anymore. Do you know what I mean? I've been sat at the laptop for maybe 9 or 10 hours. I haven't eaten anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, this is not it, right? I know deep down this is not it. But what I've done in my head is I've sort of gone like, no, this is good now. I'm good at this now. And if I stop, I'll become bad at it somehow. I won't be able to get back here. And actually the opposite is true. The
mm,
opposite is true. Like if you stop when the timer goes off and you're like, oh, I've just thought of all these things I want to do. It's like, okay, you can have 5 minutes grace to write down the things you want to do, and you get to do them tomorrow. And you're excited about doing them tomorrow. Whereas if you'd
ah,
just continued to like go, 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 completely burnt yourself out, a lot of the work that you would have done towards the end of that session would have been bad, even though you thought it was good. And when you come back to it the following day, you're like, I'm not excited about this anymore.
yeah,
So I do think there's some like there's some surprising things that I learned around like, you know, sticking to the time limit, even when you want to do more.
yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
like that because I have that it's almost like I when I get into a flow, I'm like I don't want to break the flow. But it sounds like by breaking the flow, you actually, learn some things and set yourself up to get back into it quicker the next.
Yeah. And also I am of the belief actually that like keeping like we have a tendency to like get a bit mystical about this stuff. You know,
Mhm.
like we think that flow is magic
Yeah.
and that like we've only got flow, we're only in flow but because something magical has happened. And it's I think it's a really dangerous type of magical thinking
Mm.
actually, because if you allow yourself to believe that, you're kind of like you're kind of discounting the possibility that you can get back, right? Do you know what I
Ah,
mean?
either
Whereas,
or.
like,
Yeah.
if you trust that, oh, I'm going to write down these things. I'm now excited to work on this tomorrow in my allotted, you know, bit of time. You'll be back there and flow because you're excited.
Mhm.
Like, trust that you can get back in there, that you can get back to flow.
I
Yeah.
love that. All right, so we have about 4 minutes left.
Mm, sorry.
All good. So I like this one. So minor discomforts exist everywhere. We had some chats about this in the attendee chat. So have you found that building your discomfort tolerance through goal setting actually increased your tolerance in other areas of your life? And if so, how?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do think it has. Funnily enough, so we had a team day yesterday, Women in Tech SEO, like we all got together, and we were talking about some stuff. Erin and I were just talking about some stuff, and I think I even said to you, like, be okay with the discomfort, sit in it, like sit in it. You're okay.
Yeah.
sit in it, trust that you're okay, sit in it. And I do think it's been really like it's been really helpful in a bunch of ways. And this is maybe a little bit deep, but like I do think that like it's allowed me to like better understand and regulate my own emotions more generally.
Yeah.
Like in the broader sense, it's allowed me to be a little bit more, sorry, a little bit less reactive. So, like it's that kind of thing like, oh, I'm suddenly feeling a feeling. Rather than just giving straight into that feeling
Mhm.
and reacting, I feel like I'm a little bit better able, not all the time, but I'm a little bit better able to go like, oh, okay, that's a thing. What's that? Like, let's name
Mhm.
that feeling. What is it that I'm feeling? Where is it coming from? Like, don't just kick straight back against it or react. Like let yourself just be like, oh, okay, where's that come from? What is
Yeah.
that?
I
Yeah.
love that. And I think even, your example from yesterday, you actually encouraged discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think you said something like, think about breaking the rules that you have maybe built for yourself.
Mm,
Think about if you were to break this value you have,
mm.
what possibilities exist, right? And it's almost like this idea to kind of encourage more creative thinking, but also could be used as an idea to sit with the discomfort of how it would feel to break a value, maybe even test, like, how strong is that value for me?
Yeah, and like we all have these stories we tell ourselves,
Uh,
right? We all have these stories we tell ourselves that like aren't like they aren't necessarily true. Like we've absorbed them somewhere along the way, but they aren't necessarily true. So like a really common one is like, like and it happens a lot like a lot of people when they're kids at some point, somebody told them like in an art class or something that they were like bad at drawing. And so
mhm.
now like they never do like any kind of visual art because they were told they were bad and they internalized that. And it's like, like what would happen if you let that go? What would happen if you could allow yourself just to like or even like, yeah, maybe you are bad at art, but like, who cares? Like, what does bad at art even mean? Like, if you're having fun with it, like, could you allow yourself to have fun with it? Yeah, so I think like, yeah, stuff like that, it
I
can be
love that.
helpful.
Well, beautiful. We will end on that
Mm,
note. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for filling up the chat, for giving us some great Q&As. We will be sending out a recording of this afterwards for all of you to come back to, enjoy. If you weren't able to tune in live with us, thank you for coming and rewatching. And thank you so much, Hannah, for your beautiful story, for all your help, and for all your answers.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. You're all amazing.
Take care.
Bye.